Okay, hi everyone.
Take a screenshot.
And I'll take a screenshot. Um, okay, thanks for joining me for session two. Uh, if you're okay to be recorded, can you all raise your hand? Thank you, because it's recording now. Just set the timer. All good. Okay, so session two, we're going to talk about the same unit identifying carpentry tools. We're going to discuss and do a quiz about the safety requirements of using these tools. So I'm just going to open up a quick clip for us to watch. I'll just share my screen. Hang on, we'll pause that for a minute. Oh, hang on. Okay, you've all got my screen? Okay, I'm going to hit play. Just let me know if you can't hear it.
Today I'm Nick and I'm a leading hand chippy here on site. If you're anything like me, you use power tools every day. These are the tools of our trade, but how often do we stop and think, are we using them safely? These machines and appliances can cause serious injury, even death. So it's absolutely essential that you know how to use them safely. You can move from being safe to unsafe in less than a second. So let's take a minute to talk about the key safety rules. So the first rule is, have you been trained to use the tool? If not, don't use it, leave it alone. Is the machine or appliance in perfect working order? Are the guards in place? Does it have a current safety tag? Has it been serviced to the manufacturer's specification? Hey, and what about you? Are you good to go? Are you drug and alcohol free? Do you have the right PPE? Have you got rid of any distractions, especially your phone? And are you fully focused and concentrating on the task? Fire! Have you planned your workflow to eliminate risks? Is your work area tidy? And what about your mates? Are you keeping them safe as well? Remember, if you are not 100% confident using a tool or an appliance, then do the right thing and stop. See your supervisor or a safety manager. Switch on here before you switch on there. Think safe. Work safe. Go home safe.
Okay, I will just stop sharing for a minute. Um, so that was from WorkSafe Australia. Whoa.
Hi. Welcome back to another HSEbox.com video. In this video, we will talk about the top 10 safety hazards in construction.
Bear with me for a minute.
Before we continue, do you know that subscribe to our channel is free?
Where is
And
that
drop a
coming?
like it's free as well.
Okay, we stopped that. Um, so what's that? Okay. Um, so as you could see on that video, some of those tools looked like they could do a lot of damage to your body if you weren't using it correctly. Um, so, why? I'll just ask a question. I'll leave it open to anyone to answer. Why do you think it is important that we've had the appropriate training in how to use a tool correctly?
Because they're very sharp.
Yeah, some of them pictures showed some pretty graphic images of accidents in the beginning. And I've witnessed my fair share of accidents on building sites. Some not so bad, but others that we've had to call an ambulance for. So I've only had a couple of times where we've needed an ambulance, but accidents can happen. And often it is from being a little complacent and not using your tools correctly or not being trained. Maybe about 20 years ago, I was working on a building site, and a friend of mine who's a painter and decorator by trade, he wanted to be our labourer, our carpentry labourer. We got him to cut some lining boards with a circular saw. We did ask him, have you ever used a circular saw? Are you okay with using a circular saw? And he was, yes, all good. I know what I'm doing. As it turned out, he wasn't really fully competent in using a circular saw. We got him cutting all the timbers, and then the next minute we hear him yell out, and we all go running to him. The saw had kicked back and he lost a few fingers, and I had to drive him to the hospital. I'll always remember that day because it was it was probably pretty traumatic for him and a little bit for me as well, having to do the first aid and get him to the hospital. So yeah, it is very important to be trained in the tool that we're using and to be shown properly how to use the tool, and never to make assumptions, even if someone says yes, that they know what they're doing. Because sometimes, especially men, they will say yes. It's a bit of an ego thing for men. Women, not so much. Women are happy to ask questions, I've noticed, with some of the apprentices that are women these days. They will ask a question if they're not sure about something. However, the boys and the men, their ego gets in the way a little bit, and they will not ask questions, and they will try and fake it until they make it, which some of them do, but then often you come up with accidents like this.
Did that man get his fingers sewn back on?
They saved one of them, but he did lose one of them. So, and he had some nerve damage. And I've also seen another accident with a circular saw. It was my boss as an apprentice. He took the guard off his circular saw, and it flicked up and it spun around and actually got his wrist. So it just slit his wrist, but as you can imagine, you've got some pretty important veins and arteries on your wrist there. I don't think it actually hit his radial artery, but there was still a lot of blood. And I also had to do first aid then and call an ambulance. And that wasn't fun either. That's probably the worst accident that I've seen. Okay, we're just going to...
Did you say the guy who lost his fingers, was he a painter?
Yeah, he's a painter by trade. So after that, he did have a little bit of a fear of circular saws after that, and he pretty much just went back to painting, and he's stuck with painting ever since. So yeah, having accidents like that can really traumatize you and actually make you fearful of even wanting to continue in proceeding with your trade and wanting to keep using the tools. I had a near miss when I was an apprentice. I just touched a bit of a blade, circular saw blade, with my finger. I was lucky enough just to get a little nick. I've also shot myself with a nail gun a couple of times. And a lot of that for me was, early on it was inexperience, but later on it was more experience, but just getting complacent. And sometimes you find The older tradesmen, they know what they're doing. They know all about safety, but they can just get a little bit complacent. And sometimes you've got to pull each other up or pull yourself up just to maintain your safety. So let's do another quiz now. I'll just share my screen again and I'll open up the document first. Pool safety. Here we go. Just get my screen to share again. You can all see the screen? Yep. Okay. I will start this quiz. If you just want to unmute yourselves again, we'll just do this quiz as an activity together. Does this pop up the same quiz? Hang on. Just bear with me for a minute. I'm going to start this again because it's taken me to a different page. Okay, here's the quiz. As he said in the video, always examine the tool for damages before use. True or false?
True.
True.
That is correct. Submit answer. What is going on here? Here we go. Let's start again. Okay, we said true. And that is correct. A lot of these questions, they should be common sense, but common sense sometimes doesn't exist with some people, and that's why we need to do all these safety inductions. Is it okay to wear loose clothing, dangling objects and jewelry using hand tool?
False.
You would think this is common sense, but
Let's see.
that's the correct answer. Another thing to keep in mind, especially for ladies and also for myself, I used to have long hair halfway down my back, as long as the ladies, and not having it tied back can be a safety issue too for getting caught in spinning blades and drills. So if you've got long hair, it's always a good idea to have it tied back in a ponytail at the bare minimum, or a bun. The last thing you want is for your hair to get caught in a spinning object and get ripped out. Keep cords and hoses away from heat, oil, and sharp edges. True or false?
True.
True, yeah.
Common sense, common sense. But I do see on sites sometimes leads getting run through water puddles. I've seen leads that have been cut on site. I've actually cut a power lead on site a couple of times back in the day when we used power leads with a circular saw. And you go running to the meter box straight away to turn the power off. When that happens, that is a potential electrocution hazard. Use only tools and equipment in good condition. True or false?
Yes.
True.
True.
True. That is correct. It's okay to make adjustments or clear a jam in a tool while the power tool is running.
False.
You would think that one was
Oh,
common
damn.
sense. Like you don't want to try and pull out a stuck bit of timber in a circular saw while it is still moving.
Yeah. But sometimes people don't think. Like I know a man, you got something out of the blade of the lawnmower. You know, you're not thinking sometimes.
Yeah,
Oh, I got to get that out.
yeah. And even myself, I should know better. There's been times where I've been using my drop saw or miter saw or radial arm saw or whatever you want to call that tool, and things do get in the way, and you're waiting for that blade to stop to pull out a stuck bit of timber. But I could see how it would be so easy to actually jump the gun and not wait for the blade to stop
Yeah.
spinning. And it's also good practice when you're clearing any jams like that to actually unplug the tool and remove the battery if it's a battery operated tool, or remove the air hose if it's an air tool. If any tool breaks or malfunctions, report it to the supervisor immediately.
True.
That's correct. I think we're 100% so far. Like I said, a lot of these are common sense. They should be common sense. Before connecting to a power source, make sure the power is turned on.
False.
Correct. Yeah, that's common sense too, but it could have also been a trick question. But from a safety point of view, you always want to make sure the power is turned off, especially with power tools. Sometimes the trigger button can actually be locked on, and it will activate the tool as soon as you plug it in. I've had that happen with not so much a circular saw, a tool that it does tend to happen with a lot is a belt sander. They can't do a lot of damage to you unless they really hit part of your body, but they can really take off and they could potentially break something or run into someone else. Another tool is a nail gun, like an old air gun. Sometimes they can go off when you plug the battery in or plug the lead in. I have seen that happen before. So it's always good to make sure that it's switched off. And in the case of a nail gun, that it's not pointing towards anybody when you plug it in, because they can have that possibility. Safety glasses shall always be worn whenever you are using our hand tools.
True.
The answer to that is true, and it should be worn for using all tools. However, you do still see a lot of people out on a building site not using safety glasses. But it should just be a habit. Just before we go on, I've got a twin brother. He's not in the construction industry. However, he was using a chainsaw several years ago. He didn't have safety glasses on, and a bit of timber that came off the log that he was cutting with the chainsaw flung up and hit him in the eye. And as a result, he spent quite a bit of time in the eye and ear hospital. He hasn't lost sight of his one eye there. However, it did freeze his, what's the black bit in your eye, your pupil. It doesn't open and close like our pupils do for light. So he's often having to wear sunglasses a lot because his pupil won't open and close to adjust to the different light settings. Whereas if he had been wearing safety glasses, that wouldn't have happened. Okay, there's several types of power tools, including electric, pneumatic, hydraulic. True or false?
True.
True. You could probably add some to that list. So electric, pneumatic is like an air tool through an air compressor. Hydraulic is more of some workshop equipment where they've actually got hydraulic oil running through the equipment. Besides electric these days is the battery operated tools, which out on a building site, probably more than 50% of tradesmen these days use the battery operated tools. Never use electric tools in wet conditions. True or false?
Oh, is that a trick one maybe? Like
Electric tools.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say this is a trick question.
So could you use your battery operated one in a wet condition or?
I'll answer that in a second. If we answer it, this is specifically talking about, I think, a tool that plugs into a power lead. So for in this case, would you say true? However, with a battery operated tool, even though the chance of electrocution isn't there like a corded power tool, generally the wet weather or the rain or the moisture, the tools don't like that anyway. So just from my own experience using my battery tools, if I'm using my drop saw and it's been a bit wet, the rain actually interferes with the tool and it will actually stop working until things dry out properly. So I think even with your battery tools, even though it's not as much of a safety issue, there is a little charge that comes from the batteries in a battery operated tool. However, the wet conditions are not going to allow you to use that tool anyway. So you either don't, you wait for a drier weather, or you do some indoor work instead. So I would say no. When not in use, power tools should be disconnected. True or false?
True.
True. the main reason for this is they can still go off when they're still plugged in. Whereas if they're disconnected, it eliminates the risk of injury. Like I've heard of cases where someone has bumped the trigger on a tool, for example. They're not using the tool, but it's been plugged in and it has gone off, and they've actually cut themselves with the tool accidentally because they've accidentally knocked the trigger or something on the specific tool, and it's caused them an injury. So they should always be disconnected when not in use. Especially big. I've done a lot of renovations over the years for different clients, and often when you're doing a renovation, you might be doing it for someone that may have little kids running around. As much as it's the parents' responsibility to keep their children out of your way while you're trying to do your job, it's also your responsibility to not have anything lying around that could pose a safety risk to them. So it's always a good idea. If you're not using the tool at the time, unplug it. Because I've often had kids come up while I'm working at someone's house and wanting to grab my tools or have a play with my tools while I'm off doing something else. So I've always made it a habit of mine, especially in that scenario, make sure they're disconnected. The last thing you want is for somebody to get injured from your tool that you've just left plugged in. It could be a very big insurance issue for you. Keep a safe distance between your hands and all moving parts of a power tool. True or false? Common sense would think that that is correct. And I have seen people that have had their hands too close to a circular saw blade and they've cut themselves, like I shared about myself when I was an apprentice. My finger was just too close to the blade. Whereas if you keep yourself a safe distance, you're eliminating that risk. Now, we're starting to run out of time here, so we are just going to quickly smash through the rest of these quiz questions. Don't leave a power tool unattended while running. Yeah, common sense. That is correct. Next question. Is it okay to startle someone who is using a power tool?
False.
Yes, I'm actually going to go into a bit more detail about this question. And I don't care if we don't get through the rest of these questions. The reason for that, I can give an example. One time when I was on a building site, we had a few of us carpenters there. My boss at the time was using a circular saw to cut a big sheet of sheet flooring, and someone was behind him working with a nail gun, and they shot a nail gun while he was using the circular saw, and it actually made him jump while he used the circular saw. The saw actually kicked back. Luckily, no one was injured. But yeah, this question does raise a very good point. If you startle someone like that while they're in the middle of using a tool, it could cause them an injury, or it could cause other people around them an injury from them losing control of the tool from being startled. So that's actually a very good point to raise. I'll just do a couple more questions and then we will wrap this up. Safety guards, use safety guards exactly as they're supposed to be used. This one is common sense. Okay, one more question. When tightening a nut with an adjustable wrench, always, well, this one is an interesting one, always pull the wrench towards you, never push the wrench away from you. This one actually stumped me the first time. Let's have a guess and I'll go through the answer with you.
Well, right is tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true or false? True?
When tightening, always pull.
Like this is from a safety point of view.
I'd say away from you, so false.
False. Okay, let's see what it says. I'm just going to quickly go through this answer because we've run out of time.
No, correct.
Yeah, it's actually incorrect. So when tightening a nut with an adjustable wrench, it's recommended to pull the wrench instead of pushing it away because pulling the wrench provides better control and leverage, allowing for more precise and effective tightening.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Pushing the wrench could lead to less
Got
control.
it.
So that's the reason. This actually stumped me and I got this question wrong. But yeah, that's the reason. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now and I'm going to hit stop.